My name is Jagdeep Podichetty. I'm the Senior Director of Predictive Analytics with the Critical Path Institute. With me, I have Grace Lee, who is my colleague. She's the Quantitative Medicine Scientist at the Critical Path Institute as well. So in today's session, we're going to talk about AI algorithm literacy. The goal of the session is to discuss how AI algorithm literacy can help in wider adoption of AI algorithms within the drug development space, especially looking at specific context of use and to ensure that the AI algorithms that are used are fit for purpose, right? So maybe I'll just start with maybe a show of hands. How many of you have used an AI tool? And this could include maybe ChatGPT. So I guess most of you are familiar with some sort of AI tool. You can call yours, if you have put in a prompt in ChatGPT, you can call yourself an AI developer. Because that's basically a zero-shot learning, right? However, there's a lot more that goes behind that, right? With the advent of Gen AI, we are seeing more and more adoption, not just in drug development, but in everything. I'll give you an anecdote. I live in the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area, and if you drive around in the Bay Area, you will see these billboards about, it's very technical billboards on AI services. And I'm driving and I'm thinking, who are these targeting? Because even me in the AI space, this is very technical to understand. So you can see that AI is getting ingrained in every aspect of life. However, it's important to understand how this applies in the context of drug development, right? And we have been learning about, connecting the dots throughout the day to day. That's sort of our theme for the day. And the literacy side of AI algorithm is what we want to discuss during our session. So how do we connect the dots between stakeholders that come from different backgrounds, and how do we leverage this powerful tool of AI algorithms? So with that, I'll hand it over to Grace Lee, who is going to give a short presentation just to level set, discuss what is AI algorithm literacy, because we need to start with the definition. Why do we care, right? And what are algorithms, how they are created, are they, how do we work with them? So Grace, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, JD. And my first slide appeared there already. So as JD was saying, if this talk was just... Here? Yeah. What a way to wake people up on 4 p.m. in the afternoon. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, if this talk was just, or if this panel was just about AI and its applications, there'd be no need for an introduction. We've seen it appear literally everywhere in our society, in drug development. It can have incredible effects. The problem that comes up when you have something as huge as AI and as buzzwordy as AI is the ability to lose nuance. And that can end up causing all sorts of problems when we start to think about applying these algorithms to drug development. In particular, one of the big challenges is you can't necessarily say one algorithm is strictly better than another, whatever someone may claim. But in the end, algorithms aren't created equal. They are ultimately the children of the people that develop them. They carry with them all of the biases and the assumptions that are made by those developers. And that's not necessarily something malicious. We can think of that in terms of data in particular. If you look at this diagram that's shown here, if you have two algorithms that are trained on two different populations, then they may not necessarily be directly comparable. One may be better for one use, and another may be better for another. And I think that the implications here for clinical investigations is pretty clear, that even though an algorithm may appear like it's accurate and fit for purpose in a specific data set, there's no guarantee that that accuracy will extend beyond this specific group that you're looking at. So then the question is no longer, is this algorithm better than another, but what is the context in which this algorithm is best, and what context is the other algorithm the best? And so that leads us to needing a tool to assess that. We need to be able to figure out all of the nuances that are associated with these algorithms and be able to properly not only assess them, but also communicate them between a variety of different people. In other words, we need, as a group, to have AI algorithm literacy, which we're defining as that process of understanding the structure and function of an AI algorithm that is developed or assessed with respect to a particular clinical intended use case. This is hugely important in determining if an algorithm is going to be fit for whatever purpose you're using it for, and also to facilitate communication regarding the benefits, limitations, and implications of your algorithm use and selection. That's not to say everyone needs to go out there and become an AI expert right away. We can have different understandings of algorithm literacy, and we can divide that up into layers. At maybe the highest level, we can function on a conceptual understanding. But as we dive deeper, we need to start to understand the intended use in clinical or drug development contexts. Notice that this isn't necessarily an AI scientist's role. This is going to require different people, in this case, a clinician. And by the time, at the next level, we need to have fit-for-purpose data handling and model training, integrating the data scientists, data managers, and the people who understand how that data is collected and interpreted. Finally, we get to the interpretability, explainability, and validation layer, where we try to understand what the algorithm's outputs mean and how we can explain the way that we approached getting those outputs. And finally, we need to take all of this and connect it to the ethics and biases that may come from the implications of the way we built our algorithm and the way that we collected our data. All of these are going to require different people to make them happen. And that's why public-private partnerships are the perfect place for facilitating AI algorithm literacy and integrating it into the process of AI and machine learning evaluation assessment. The ability to gather all of these different people and leverage each of their unique expertise to build a common language and operationalize your AI algorithms to impact drug development. Before I turn it over to our wonderful panel, I want to end with a call to action. Because AI is rapidly advancing and being integrated into so many aspects of drug development, as it is in many different fields, we need AI algorithm literacy and communication to maximize the impact and minimize the risks that are associated with AI. And once again, this involves not only the AI scientists, but all parties in drug development. That includes the developers, the regulators, clinical investigators. Everyone comes from diverse backgrounds, and these backgrounds need to be put together in order to make AI useful in drug development. And AI algorithm literacy here can be language for helping bridge the knowledge gaps and maximize the utility of AI in drug development. Most importantly, this can be a proactive process. We can bring everyone together ahead of time and address these questions so that we can maximize the use of everyone's time and resources. All right, with that, I will turn it over to our panel.
All right, thank you, Grace, for the introduction to the session. We have an excellent panelists to discuss AI algorithm literacy. I would like to introduce our panel. We have Tala Fakuri. She is the Associate Director of Data Science and AI Policy with the FDA CDER Office of Medical Policy. We have Ji Ren. She is the Director of Data Science in the Digital Clinical Measures at Merck. We have Olivia Lutrinja from Certara. He is the Distinguished Scientist. We are also joined by two panelists who have joined us via Zoom. We have James Liu. He is the Distinguished Scientist, Distinguished AI Scientist in Modeling and Simulation, as well as Clinical Pharmacology at Genentech. And last but not least, we have Liang Zhao. He is the Professor and Director for the Center of Regulatory Sciences at the University of California, San Francisco. All right, so to kick things off, I would like to maybe just follow up or build upon the last point you made, Grace, on the call to action in terms of bridging the gap between different stakeholders, and they could be, AI experts or non-technical stakeholders, right? So how can this framework or AI algorithm literacy can help bridge that gap? So before you guys answer the question, it'd be nice for each one of you to maybe give a little bit of background about yourself, how you got into the space of AI, and how you have seen it evolve, and then maybe the concept of AI algorithm literacy in the context that you see from your vantage point, and then maybe some ideas around how do we bridge that gap or connect the dots, following the theme of today's session. So maybe I'll start maybe with our on virtual panelists. Maybe James, you can kick things off.
Hi everyone. Thanks for the opportunity to participate in this event. So I'm James Liu. I've been at Genentech for close to past 7 years, and I currently lead a team of AI scientists applying machine learning to support clinical trials, in particular generating insights and how to make predictions. So regarding this question of helping to bridge the gap, I certainly see this AI algorithm literacy helping in stakeholder engagement. For instance, even before one does predictive modeling, it's important to gather opinions before from the stakeholders to decide what is really important and necessary in terms of the objectives that need to be made and the quality of the model that is sufficient for the context of use. So it's one very effective way to bring everybody on board and raise concerns beforehand as well, before even the predictive modeling work starts. Furthermore, it can also give a framework to provide communication between different AI processes and outcome. So by providing this language, we can then center the discussion to kind of highlight some of the insights as well as some of the shortcomings provided by an AI model. And all this can help to gain the buy-in from the stakeholders.
Thank you, James. Maybe I'll go next to Liang. You want to share your thoughts, maybe provide a bit of background?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, JD. My name is Liang. My background is mainly from 3 areas. I started my career from industry, worked with the BMS, AstraZeneca, then worked with FDA. 2 weeks back, I was a division director in the division of quantitative method modeling in FDA for 10 years. My total career in FDA have a span of 15 years, worked both for new drug, generic drugs. Now I transitioned myself to academia. I think it's a good introduction for me to the Bay Area, where I would focus my research on AI-focused drug development tools. I myself is a pharmacometrician. In the past, I published papers in the conventional area like machine learning. I kind of saw James also subject matter expert at that area. Basically, we met in meetings, conferences. Also, later on, we developed a large language model called FarmBird. Since we know all the large language models originated from the foundational model, which is called BERT. So we developed a model specifically, domain-specific model for drug labeling language reading. It's been published in briefings in bioinformatics, which is a highly ranked journal in the large language model field. So with that, I think there are many, since the topic is about the gaps, I think there are many gaps. We are now kind of facing the impact, the overwhelming influence of AI. I myself confused. For example, for the trying to understand the algorithm before we trust them, right? How to build, instill transparency and interpretability of the AI generated outcomes. So with that, I did dig into the original paper published in 2017, which is called the self-attention mechanism is all you need. I may not be perfectly capturing the title, but that's developed by a group of Google scientists. Now they are not, all of them are not associated with the Google anymore, but that kind of laid the foundation for GPT or any other large language models. I think it's very hard to understand the algorithm if we really want to dive into it. You can, if you search YouTube, you can find hundreds of videos on how to understanding that paper. With that, I think I'm a modeler, so we need to apply some kind of practical principles into it. In modeling field, we know fit for purpose. In AI, we can also now just open with the concept that there are different algorithms for AI, which algorithm for which purpose. I think that's one gap that we are facing. The other is that there are so many uncertainties, how to put the regulations and ethics thinking into it. So are we losing control or are we far away from losing control? I found 2 schools of thought. One that, here is very dangerous, including Elon Musk, right? Then we need to have a tighter control. The other thought is we are still far away from the AGI, the fully intelligence. We are worrying too early before the technology really kicked in. Large language model is only a language model, cannot instill too much deep logical thinking yet. We are still far away from that. I do hear 2 schools of thought, but with that, I think there are many gaps for us to fill. This panel is really a good venue for us to tackle on it. I will say I'm not giving any answers, solutions. I'm just want to reserve more time for the other panel members to comment on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Liang. I think it's important to start to identify, what gaps we have before we start to address it. So maybe I can go next to Olivier, if you want to, share your background, how you got into this space, your experience with AI algorithms, other algorithms in general, seeing the gaps, working with different stakeholders, what has been your experience and what gaps have you identified, and then maybe down the line we can start to find out solutions for those.
Thanks, and thank you for providing me the opportunity to provide a perspective. So I'm Olivier Lutringer. I'm a quantitative drug developer. I'm not a data scientist. I'm not an AI fan. I'm just using the right tool for the right questions. I started my career 20 years ago already working on AI-related methodologies. It's not new. When we were in research leveraging on omic data, we were using causal inference modeling. It's an AI-related technology. So I think we need just to say that AI is a tool and that we need to use the tool to address the right question in the right context. I have been leading multiple modeling teams in the last 20 years, from research to development, and in the last 10 years in medical affairs. And I have to say that 10 years ago, I think AI made our life quite difficult. Why? Because all the senior leaders came and say, oh, where could you apply AI? I said, but we're already using it. And yeah, but we need to use more. And I think it is really the case that AI can trigger gain in efficiency. To date, in big pharmas, it's used for what? For trial, conduct, protocol, automation, data reporting. But we heard this morning that there are gaps still. There are gaps in the understanding of disease. There are gaps in early diagnostic factors. There are gaps in prognosis factors. We hear about precision medicine. We hear about all this technology. But I think the topic that you are bringing on the table is one of the most critical. There are questions to address. There are decisions to inform. If you put yourself into the shoes of the patient, I'm a patient with disease X. How do I progress? To what kind of treatment am I eligible? What is the therapeutic window for a specific mechanism of action? We heard this morning about early, late, but there is a fact. There is interpatient variability in disease progression. So the question is, we speak about gaps. What are the key questions to address? There are disease-centric questions to address. Early diagnostic factors, prognosis factors, factors to detect early disease recurrence. Can we leverage on AI for this? Definitely yes. But AI is not a shaker where you put the big data and you have a solution. It's a tool that could be combined with other methodology, and that's where we need to start. The other gaps that I would like to mention is the following. When I started in the modeling field, we were all pharmacometricians, system biologists, system pharmacologists. And then you have data scientists coming. Oh, is that not computer science anymore? No, it's data science now. And we need to use AI, it's okay. But the problems are the same. So I think there are definite areas where you can apply AI, image processing, signal detection, making sense of a lot of information. But we need to use the tool for the right purpose. And I think that's where this AI literacy framework, it becomes critical. So I'm stopping here because there are other questions, but I think it's one of the most critical. When I was invited, I was expecting, okay, we really have to see what is AI, how it can be used. No, let's define first the context. We have problems to solve. Let's use the right tools for the right purpose.
Yeah, absolutely. So, G, from your expertise coming from the PhD side of things, right? If you can provide maybe your background, how AI fits into that, and then connecting it towards the AI algorithm literacy and the gaps. because now we are talking about a separate technology that is integrated with another new technology in the context of drug development. How do these things play a role, and what gaps have you seen or you can potentially foresee that we need to address?
Absolutely. Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to be here. This is Jay Ren. I work at Merck. We are in a group called Digital Clinical Measures, and we develop digital clinical measures using digital health technologies, and hopefully we can use those measures to enable our drug development pipeline. And by that, I think it became obvious that algorithms and data and measures, and a lot of times AI and machine learning algorithms surround me most of the time. And what I have seen in the drug development space, developing these digital measures using DHTs, is that there are a lot of gaps. People don't talk the same language. When we talk about validation, it means 100 things to 100 different functional areas. When we talk about AI, there are so many questions that may or may not be applicable to what we are actually trying to develop. So I think very early on, what we realize is that having a set of common language and terminology is critical. So in the digital health technology area, I think we started to talk about framework, talk about language, defining things as simple as what is a digital measure, what is a biomarker, what is a digital biomarker, but also deeper down, because we as the experts that develop these digital clinical measures for the clinical trial team to use, we have to understand the algorithm. We have to understand what was the data that was being generated as evidence. Is the evidence fit for purpose for what the clinical team wants? And is it addressing the right questions for the drug development pipeline? If the pipeline asks for a question X, and my algorithm is trying to solve a very different question, that may not be fit for purpose. And also understanding what is the kind of the boundary conditions for us to be applying these type of algorithms and the tools. At the end of the day, what we develop is a tool that enables or aims to enable the pipeline, not the other way around. So I think we talk to all kinds of functional areas within the company, right? Anybody from IT to data management to anywhere in the clinical team, in the operation area, and in the statistical space. And we think, having that literacy, understanding what is the roles and responsibilities for each function is very, very critical in an organization like us.
Excellent, thank you. So next I'll go to you, Tala. So given your regulatory background, coming from that perspective, what have you seen over the years, evolution and adoption of AI and different engagement from different stakeholders? If you can start with your background and then provide that perspective, that would be helpful.
Sure, thank you for having me, Tala Fakori, at the FDA. My background, all types of things: medical technologist, cancer researcher, epidemiologist, data scientist, even though I didn't know I was one while I was doing it. But this just shows you that the field rapidly grows and we pick up new terminologies along the way, which is fine. What I want to say is that traditional machine learning techniques, perhaps the ones that I used to use when I programmed, but also what we've seen in drug development, are really the ones that have been productive for many, many years, right? So we've received to date over 500 submissions with AI or machine learning components. They're established methods. When you think about deep learning, it's been around for a while. People are using it. They're familiar with the technology. But when we talk about AI, we can't just think about one thing. There's so many different types of AI. I don't think any of us imagined that we would have ChatGPT a couple of years ago. So Gen AI, it's its own thing. The way that we think about it, the way that we would assess its performance is one thing compared to causal AI, compared to deep learning. So when we talk about AI literacy, I think it's very important to specify what type of AI approach are we using. There are a lot of similarities between traditional machine learning methods and traditional statistical methods, but there are also a lot of substantial differences that we cannot ignore. The technology is very data-driven, so the way that you evaluate your model's output also involves evaluations of the data used to train the models. That's a very different approach to how we've all, I think, been doing science with machine learning versus traditional statistical methods. And when we talk about the gaps, there are huge gaps, and we need more translators. We need people who understand the way that we do, drug development, the way we've been doing drug development, but also people who understand the technology. We don't have a lot of translators. We need more translators. More recently, I heard the term multi-fluent researchers who can navigate these different disciplines. Also, the way that we think is different. If you talk to a data scientist or an engineer, and I know some of my engineering FDA colleagues are here, the way that an engineer thinks, the way a computer scientist thinks, is very different from a life scientist. And it's very important to bring everyone together from the inception of a project and not just an afterthought.
Excellent. So thank you for that. So maybe from the nonprofit side of things, Grace, if I can ask you to comment on, the stakeholder engagement, the PPP side of things. What has your experience been in terms of AI algorithm literacy?
So my experience with AI algorithm literacy and algorithm literacy in general, I think this extends beyond simply the AI application. It can apply to any sorts of models, DHT, feature extraction algorithms that we use. The ability to gather up all these different perspectives and really learn, like you were saying, Tala, the way that other people think. We can start to put the pieces together and start to try and build this holistic picture of our algorithm, not just the pure code algorithm itself, but the context and the connection to that, what assumptions are made in the code or by the modeler, and how do those translate and reflect on the way that this algorithm is being used.
Awesome. Okay, thank you. So, so further muddying the water and just using the point you made in terms of, the importance of the domain of application where AI algorithms are applied. So maybe if you can comment on how does that impact? Because the communication might be very different, right? There's a whole aspect of the clinical aspect that needs to come into play, plus all of the stuff we just discussed, right? How does that, is that an important factor to consider, or is that something that can be integrated, within, the larger scope of AI algorithm deployment? If I can start with you to comment on that.
Sure. So the 500 submissions that we received with AI components, they're across the board, from discovery, preclinical or non-clinical, clinical, pharmacovigilance, and manufacturing. Obviously, you need domain expertise in every area, right? The applications are so different. If it's in manufacturing, you might have computer vision. The way that we think about using AI for computer vision, or if you have a camera on a conveyor belt, will be very different than if I'm creating an algorithm to determine doses for a clinical trial. So the context of use is critical. And the context of use, when we talk about context of use, it's the role and scope of the AI model to answer a specific question that you may have. Some of you may be familiar with this concept. It's from the Ask Me the NV40. That concept, I think, can be applied to a lot of evidence generation that we do, right? Without knowing your context of use, it becomes very difficult to know how you're going to evaluate a specific model. Again, if it's AI in a DHT, the terms there, verification, validation, these are loaded terms that mean very specific things. So you have to be able to articulate that. And obviously, depending on the context of use, you're going to bring in your domain expertise. But also don't forget the data scientists, or whatever we want to call them, they need to be full partners in that equation. It can't, again, be an afterthought.
Excellent. Yep. So, Olivier, if I can ask you to comment on that, given, within your organization, working on different domain, how does things translate when it relates to AI algorithms?
I think just to build on what Salah said, I think you made an important point about the expert domains that you need to have. And I think as part of the pharma organization, what we are doing, we have integrated development plan where we summarize questions to address, but then it's about bringing the right people at the table. It's about having cross-functional synergies to discuss what is the most appropriate method to address a specific question. And from the question, also defining what kind of data would be needed. It's not only about the technology, it's about the data that would be needed to address the question in the context of the methodology to be used. So I think that's critical for me moving forward. And as well, I think for the qualification of the methodology itself, I think we need really to think not only about having a training data set, a validation data set. You need to discuss what's the overall purpose, how this algorithm, what's the intended use of the algorithms. And we need to define the validation framework in that context.
Yep, absolutely. So maybe let's move on to some tangible use cases. If we can discuss that, I think that'd be more relatable in terms of how we can apply AI algorithm literacy. So maybe if you can, James, if I can ask you to share your thoughts on any tangible example that you can share with us in terms of, AI algorithm literacy being applied to, successfully work on a project that involves AI algorithms.
Yeah, certainly. So in our work, we use AI machine learning models, for instance, to perform exposure response analysis. And this is important to make sure that we select the right dose and so as to provide the base treatment for patients. And in this case, we need to have a model that is explainable to the stakeholders. For instance, it's not sufficient to say, using this set of baseline covariates and exposure, our model has achieved an AURC of this and that number. That is not sufficient for the stakeholders to scrutinize the result and see whether or not that is in the context of this question to support the decisions. So having explainability techniques such as sharp analysis is one way to deconvolute the complex model to identify the key contributors and how they influence the model predictivity. So that's an example whereby we've used explainability techniques to unravel this black box, if you will, and try to examine its components. And also, I wanted to kind of go back to this comment regarding the context of use. I think that's a very important notion. And this is especially important to make sure our model is well aligned with the objective. So depending on what we are trying to ask an address, we need to make sure the right data is incorporated, and so that we develop the right model based on the right data, and at the end to see if that finding is able to support the decision based on the results.
Thank you, James. So, Jay, from the DHT side of things, I think it would be nice to have your experience in terms of if you have anything to share with us, because with DHT we're talking about AI algorithms that are used to process the raw data into things like gate, other features, and then they are subsequently used for maybe a predictive model, maybe a traditional stats or math model. So there's an added level of complexity or added level of literacy that needs to be provided to different stakeholders. Within this context, what has been your experience? And moving forward, how can it be more widespread in terms of adoption of, we have DHT now, maybe down the line we have newer technology that can be added to this pipeline that is ever expanding. So if you can give us a roadmap, so to speak.
Yeah, thank you for the question. I can't stress enough the importance of context of use. Thank you so much for bringing this up. Everything starts with the context of use. And I like to think about digital measures or any measures for that reason as a benefit and risk analysis. If we want to use ADHT or digital measure or AI generated measure, what is the benefit to the, in my case, to the drug development program, and where does the risk lie? And a lot of times in developing digital measures, we want to have something that is interpretable to the patients, to the caregivers, to the physicians, and to the drug developers, so that as AI algorithm itself may seem like a black box, so we can understand whether it has a linkage to the pathophysiology or it has a linkage to, how patient feels or functions, so that it has, the AI algorithm itself has a boundary condition applied to it, and then so that when we think about benefit risk, we know how we can deploy it in the real world, and where is the risk, or where does the risk lies. A simple example, if I have an algorithm that I can differentiate a group of patient population from the general population, then the next question for our function to think about is, well, how will I use this in the clinical development? Am I going to use it in the clinical trial as a screening tool? Am I going to use it as a monitoring tool? Am I going to use it as a prediction tool? And each of those uses come with their own different risk. And maybe I want to be a lot more stringent when it is used as patient screening. What does it mean if I am screened as false positives or false negatives? And those are the risks that is associated with an AI algorithm. And a lot of times it is not necessarily all retrospective. When you develop a new measure, when you design a study to generate the right data for that new measure development, you have to think about these in advance. You have to, the study has to be designed in a way that you generate the right evidence to answer the right questions. So I think, start from the context of use, start from what we want to measure, why we want to measure, how we are going to use such a new AI algorithm in the real world, either in clinical trial or eventually in clinical care, and then develop the algorithm accordingly is very important.
Excellent, thank you. So I do want to bring up big data, multimodal data, and maybe Olivier, if I can have you comment, your experience with multimodal data, imaging data, and then leveraging AI by bringing together different experts, right? You might have folks that are expert in image analysis. You might have pharmacometricians, clinical pharmacologists. And like you had mentioned before, one of the advantages or things we can leverage AI is, handling multimodal data or, data that's coming from maybe real-world data, right, EHR and so forth. So can you maybe provide to the audience maybe a use case, an example, a way to, bring these expertise together, especially now that we see, like we are trying to go earlier in the disease and then longer in the disease continuum, right? And leveraging EHR and real-world data. So you can see, as I'm speaking, you have so many different folks involved, and it might not be just one algorithm to solve everything, right? You might have a combination of different things. It's not just asking ChatGPT, here's the data I'm uploading, give me the output, right? So it'd be nice if you can share your experience regarding that.
Yeah, maybe I can share a case study. I was discussing this morning about predictive safety. And I think, we are discussing, the right drug for the right patients, but there are some patients maybe not benefiting from the drug as the overall population. So the question was, can we leverage on AI, to detect potential characteristics of patients that may trigger not full benefit? And we were leveraging on images for this. And there were companies working with us stating, yeah, you can use AI to give us the images. Of course, we were focusing on all the data privacy aspects to make them not identifiable. But we shared all the data with them, and what came out, nothing. But then we were bringing physicians on board. Physicians who were reading images for at least 20 years. And they identify something, a prior, that was used then as part of their algorithms. And this completely, changed the game. So we spoke this morning about the human brain. I think sometimes, the hypothesis needs to be defined, and that's the context of use. But starting just from the big data, hoping that the solution will come out of it, no. What knowledge do we have? What is the hypothesis? And this kind of prior may help the algorithms to bring the knowledge forward.
Excellent, thank you. So just to follow up to that, we have been talking about, PPP, public-private partnerships, being the conduit to bring, different stakeholders together. So in the context of, AI algorithm literacy, how does PPP play a part to ensure that, everyone's speaking a common language? And what would that construct look like? So maybe, Tala, if I can have you first comment on this.
Sure. I think sometimes maybe we get focused on identifying a common language, but that may not be reasonable when you're bringing people from different domains. I think more of a crosswalk of the different languages and translators is really what we need, because you don't expect to change entire disciplines, but at least understanding what the other person may be thinking or talking about. That's one consideration. The other consideration where I think, and this is mentioned in the President's executive order for new public-private partnerships that would enable the responsible regulation of AI and drug development, data is needed for AI. We need a lot of the data right now. There's a lot of data. I just want to put that out there. There's a lot of data. It's not that we need more data per se. We need more access to the data that can help us answer the questions that we want to answer. So figuring out ways to enable that is very valuable.
I see. G, you want to share your thoughts on, PPP?
Sure. I think I can think of a quote that was quoted, by many people in the room. If we want to go far, we go together. I think in the area of digital health, digital clinical measures, this is a tool that we're building together, and none of us can do it alone. So, by working with consortia, public-private partnerships, this I see is the only way that this can go far.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Liang, if I can have you comment on this as well as to how you see public-private partnership, enhance AI algorithm literacy.
Yeah, JD, thanks for giving me the chance. The question, can you please repeat the question? I lost the, I think the past we talked about use cases. Which topic are we on?
So we are talking about the public-private partnership, how that can be used to help with AI algorithm literacy.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I like this topic. I think it's this one of the most critical success factors to build AI. AI by nature cannot exhibit its value creation without big data or shared data. And the shared data usually assume a high dimensionality feature. So when we talk about AI, we need to first talk about value creation. So we talked about the gaps, everything, but when should we use AI and what the value generation? I think if there's data not there, so for example, we in the pharmacometrics field, we have been using conventional models, expert response model, James just mentioned that, and all sorts of models to optimize the trial and optimize the dosing regimen. That's basically what pharmacometricians have been doing. I will say, if without a big data available being shared by all, like a consortium through a consortium or critical path institute, it's gonna be difficult to see additional value with the limited data. I think a conventional model will do just as good as AI do, because that's what the information, the data carries. Where the conventional model will face challenges that when the data becomes hugely available, we're dealing with a huge amount of data, and the data assume high dimensionality. All the conventional model, I know many statisticians here, would have difficulty handling the data and figuring out the noise, especially when the data not structured anymore. So that's where the AI can generate the benefit, the additional value. One area I have been working on is in the bioequivalence area. Also in some new drugs, I've heard similar stories, thought that the idea is that FDA job actually dealing with a huge amount of information, unstructured information, most of them are unstructured, text-based. It's more like a ChatGPT work. So if we talk about an issue-based review or question-based review, basically based on the available information can find in the NDA, BLA, or ANDA application, if you pose a question, what the benefit risk profile of the drug, what the ADME property of the drug, either we can go by a reviewer or by a scientist in the company, digging out all the information. We can equally use AI to gain efficiency. I think there's one benefit. The other thing is, if we want to review a topic for drug developers, say if you are developing ADEs, bispecific antibody drug, there will be questions regarding what are the commonly asked questions, what the commonly faced developmental barriers, what are the typical FDA answers if we have a meeting. For those things, I think there's vast information available within industry and within the agency. Can we pull the data together and, before you have a meeting, industry have a meeting with FDA or FDA have a answer to industry, can you just ask another domain-specific GPT? I believe even you ask GPT right now, I checked that, I'm developing a small molecule with half-life 10 hours. And the drug is super hypolific. If I have an IND meeting for this indication, what would the questions I should ask FDA? ChatGPT will give you the answer. I think basically we can pull the data, make it more professionalized. I think there's not something doable. I know someone's really seriously thinking about it. In the FDA, we also kind of in the general drug office, the idea is with one single click, if we have a typical ANDA application with a PK only bioequivalence data, with one single click, can we just generate a review report? Same wise, for the tool we developed, can we just make it public facing? So before the applicant submit their submission to application to FDA, can they just use it to test it run? What would be the FDA reviews like? Is my package perfect enough, ready for application? I think those things will be, my prediction is will be rolling out in the next 2-3 years. It's not something not doable. It's very doable. It's just need a full everyone's effort through collaboration together. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you for your insights, Yang. So in the interest of time, I do want to go over, what are some of the existing resources that we can leverage? Maybe not specific to algorithm literacy, but existing, maybe in DHTs, some frameworks that we can, or guidances that we can leverage in, enhancing algorithm literacy, and then maybe also comment on what are some of the tangible next steps we can pursue, right? So maybe with the existing resources that we have, Grace, if I can have you comment on your experience, developing the framework, algorithm literacy framework within the context of DHT, if you can, connect that to AI algorithm literacy and how we can translate some of those things into AI algorithm literacy.
Yeah, I can start off, but I'm sure the others have many other tools and frameworks that are available. For context, I've developed the idea of AI algorithmic literacy within the context of digital health technologies, and those algorithms not specific to AI, but rather to that specific use case of translating the signal data that comes out of digital health into features. And what we had identified is that it really, it comes down to breaking down the algorithm into meaningful and digestible chunks that we can utilize to both compare against other algorithms and to communicate what each step, or what we're doing along each step of the way. So I can point to that specific resource. And I think in the interest of time, I'll pass it along to maybe Tala.
Yeah, so maybe Tala, if you can talk about any guidances that
Sure.
would be helpful, and then what's coming.
I'll do that in 15 seconds.
Yes.
We have 3 guidances that are in clearance. Hopefully they'll be out this year. 2 are by our colleagues at CDRH that are, on AI, one on AI PCCP, planned change control plans, sorry. The other one is on AI lifecycle management, so that's for devices. The Center for Drugs is also, will be publishing a guidance hopefully this year, and that's on considerations for using AI in drug development. But again, remember the context of use. If you're using AI as part of RWE, for example, we have tons of guidances on real world evidence. If it's a part of a DHT, we have the DHT guide. So if it's a part of the model-informed drug development, you need to look at MIDD resources. So depending on the context of use, please engage with the appropriate program.
Awesome. So maybe 30 seconds for you.
I'll just say thank you very much for all the guidances. I think this space has progressed a lot, has grown a lot. And, I think I'm fully positive the algorithm literacy is growing. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Olivier.
So in 10 seconds?
10?
So it's an inflection point. I think, focusing on disease, moving forward, pre-competitive space, working all together, leveraging on the right technology, right data at the right point in time, working as a one team to elucidate disease, and of course, following that, optimization of drug development.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. So over to Zoom, maybe 30 seconds. James, if you can highlight some next steps that we should focus on.
Yes, I think we can try to democratize AI by building user-friendly tools such as auto ML apps. Nowadays, with large language models, it's also easy to generate code that perform analysis. So this can give the user first-hand experience. And then through this learning, right, I think people will get more comfortable with AI as well as its limitations.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Liang, your final thoughts.
Yeah, 30 seconds. I still say the AI era is still at its infancy, and we have many things to do. I'm looking forward for the FDA guidance. It's gonna generate huge impact in terms of synchronize the common language and starting the thought from the common area and serve as a communication tool, and also as well as a pathway forward for regulatory use. I will welcome any collaborations. I think currently even in the academic setting, I think reform is needed. Single person power, single lab power is not sufficient to face the challenges anymore like we did in the past. I welcome any collaborations among all the stakeholders. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. So let's thank the panelists for the engaging discussion, and thank you for your attention. So I'll hand it over to Klaus to give us the closing remark for the day.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Yeah, you can stay. I'm not going to hold anybody too long because we all deserve a drink at this moment. So we connected a lot of dots, and that was fantastic today. Tomorrow, we're going to talk all about taking the data in a smart way and turn it into actionable knowledge and solutions. So stay tuned for that. Today, I started by celebrating how 2024 marks the 20th anniversary of the Critical Path Initiative. Well, I have a treat for you because this marks the start of the 20th anniversary celebration of CPath. 2025 is going to be our 20th anniversary, and we have a video treat for you. And right after that, we can all go have a drink. Thank you.
It all started with just 6 employees and one mission: to streamline the drug development process, making it faster and more cost-efficient. 20 years It all started with just 6 employees and one mission: to streamline the drug development process, making it faster and more cost-efficient. It all started with just 6 employees and one mission: to streamline the drug development process, making it faster and more cost-efficient. 20 years later, Critical Path Institute, known as CPath, continues its vital work. Over the past 2 decades, CPath has forged over 400 strategic partnerships, engaged 1,600 science and data contributors, secured more than $120 million in FDA funding since 2013, and developed solutions that have transformed challenging therapeutic areas like tuberculosis, Alzheimer's, and polycystic kidney disease. It's been 20 years of collaboration, impact, inspiration, and innovation. advancing drug development, improving lives together. Here's to 20 years of CPAP and to countless breakthroughs yet to come.